Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 2 of Office Hours, Hot for Teacher. What's going on, you might ask yourself. I came here looking for Game Master advice. Who is this attractive man with his shirt undone? Let me tell you. You've found yourself in Hot for Teacher. Hot for Teacher is a write-in relationship advice show. It's a spin-off of the call-in tabletop role-playing game mastering advice show Office Hours. Every week of Hot for Teacher, I will answer 3 questions from you, my delightful audience, submitted in advance to www.adam-koble.com/hot-for-teacher about sex, love, friendship, other types of relationships, and related quandaries of human interaction. It's a relationship advice show from your favorite game master, a non-monogamous queer man, just trying to help folks get their shit together. Hot for Teacher is the relationship advice your mother warned you about. Hot for Teacher is that deadly encounter you're not sure you can handle, but you do it anyway, because it's going to be fun. I want to stress before we get started, if anything that I talk about here on Hot for Teacher feels weird or confusing or upsetting for you to hear, I want you to talk about it. Whether live in the chat, in the comments, on the Math Squad Discord server, which you can find by Googling it if you're not watching live. I want to make sure that you know that this little space that we have here isn't the alpha and omega of all relationship conversations, right? Conversation and communication, like at the table, in relationships, is the most important thing. Even if your relationship is just 45 minutes here with me and the rest of the audience once a week. Follow up on this stuff. Pursue. Further understand. Use this place as a starting point, not an ending one. All right? So, today's first question comes to us from a troubled teen just looking for some help. That guy says, I have recently begun a relationship with my homeroom teacher. On a dare, my friends and I called a maid service, and lo and behold, it was my teacher who arrived. After some minor embarrassment, we hit it off and have been seeing each other regularly. She cleans my room, helps cook dinner, and occasionally builds lockpicks and explosive devices for me and my cat. Now, this is a complex question, that guy, for a bunch of reasons. Emotional, developmental, there are issues of consent here that need to be talked about, and like the strict legality of what's happening to you right now. So let's start with the easy stuff. Let's talk about the law. Now, the law isn't exactly a perfect place to start when you're thinking about relationships. What is or isn't legal probably isn't the first thing on your mind when you meet somebody that you like. You know, the law is often built on a bunch of assumed structural things, and it's not necessarily very good at helping you handle individual relationships. The law is written to cover as many different permutations and circumstances as possible. And while it's generally a good idea, a safe idea, not to break the law, legality and ethics are not the same thing. For example, it's illegal in many places for LGBT folks to get married to one another, let alone in some places of the world to even exist. So while the law might not be a good ethical or moral baseline, it's a really good way to keep yourself out of jail, or keep the people you care about out of jail. Observing the law can assist you in that regard. So there's this thing in most countries in their legal codes called the age of consent. It's a specific calendar age that determines when it is or isn't legal for a person to engage in sexy behaviors. Now, it's not just there to prevent underage people from having sex with each other. It's also there, along with usually other statutes, to prevent minors from the sexual advances, predations, and interference of people over the age of majority. Now, I think the principal intent of these laws, I'm not a legalist here. I'm not a Confucian. I'm not, I'm not a lawyer. But I think that the principal intent of these laws is to attempt to recognize that a person below a certain age isn't in a position to consent to sexual activity, right? That they're almost always under the influence, intentional or otherwise, of adult figures, and in many cases, not able to protect themselves. Some young people have parents to look after them. Other young people live with their mostly absent police detective uncle in a small town in rural Japan. Others live in a dusty attic above a coffee shop and are babysat by a talking feline. But let's not get too specific, shall we? The idea here is that the law acts as a form of deterrent guardianship. The law may not care about making sure you eat. The law may not care about your education, but the law can create a punitive response to the violation of its statutes regarding the inability of young folks to consent to sexual activity with someone older than them. Now, it would be really nice if we all got an education in consent and we embraced it as a concept. And we were careful and gentle and understood the implicit power dynamics between an adult and a youth. But we don't all have that education, that understanding, or a culture that cares as much about consent. And so the law can exist as a method to say, here is a specific thing you cannot do. If you do it, you will be punished. Which for now, while not optimal, is pretty good. I mean, I'm pro sexual safety for minors in lots of ways. I think that kids and developing adults need the opportunity to take care of themselves, but also that it's important to, especially younger kids, take care of them using the tools that we have available to us in our culture. This is one of those. Now, I'm not entirely sure where you're from, that guy, but let's completely hypothetically imagine that you're from, let's say, I'm going to pick a town at random. Let's say you're from Tokyo. I don't know. It's just the first one that popped to mind. So if you were from Tokyo, you would know that the age of consent in the nation of Japan is 13, which is quite low. However, it's modified by prefectural and municipal laws, such as the Youth Protection Law of Tokyo, which prohibits adults from engaging in any kind of sexual behavior with a person 17 years old or younger. Now, you didn't say to me explicitly that sex was a factor here, so maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Maybe that's not the case, but I think that it's worth being aware of. And while we're on the subject, owning lockpicks anywhere in Japan is also against the law. You can be heavily fined or jailed for up to a year, barring your certification as a locksmith, which, again, I'm assuming you probably don't have. Plus explosives. Let's not even touch that one. You know, I bet you are the kind of person to carry around a gun, or 5 too, aren't you? You're a mess, kid. But that's not what your question is about. So, you contacted a maid service, which, without context, I can't be totally sure is or isn't a euphemism. And it sort of doesn't matter here because you said that you and your teacher hit it off and are seeing each other, which to me says relationship that may contain sexual content. Now, I'm not going to assume sex stuff is happening. You probably have lots of cute girls and probably like a sexy artist friend and an obnoxious best friend you could probably try and do some sex with. If sex is a part of this relationship, see above regarding legality, right? So regardless of all the people I'm sure who want your attention right now, you're probably in this relationship with your teacher and feeling a lot of confused feelings and being in sort of a generally confused situation regarding boundaries and intimacy, right? There's a reason that we can be drawn to people in a position of power. Maybe we see our teacher as someone stable in our life. Maybe she's a familiar figure in a chaotic world. Maybe this person is a stand-in for a woman role model that you're missing, I'm assuming. That kind of attraction can get tangled up in other things, especially given that there is a cultural fetishization in Japan, I'm assuming, around maids. Often maids in Japan, and I mean the kind that you find at cafes, or as you mentioned, available for home service, they are a sexualized image of women, much like, say, cheerleaders in America. It's not inherently a sexy job, but sometimes culturally and psychologically, we cross the wires and we can objectify people based on their job. So I don't know, maybe your teacher just has a side job to make ends meet, and that side job involves cooking and cleaning and like explosives manufacturing, which in and of itself might be complicated because now the power dynamic that the two of you are used to, teacher x student, has shifted. And now you have power over her, right? Employer x employee. Not to mention the potential stuff around blackmailer, blackmailee, which I hope to fuck you're not threatening or doing or even fucking thinking about. Don't be a dirtbag. So, two things might be happening. One, it feels nice to have authority and control in a relationship situation when you're used to that relationship being the other way around. And two, it can be nice to let go of your responsibility and rely on someone else's decisions and orders instead of your own. So you both might be feeling positive feelings from this relationship, but you have to remember that it doesn't supersede the overarching power structure here. The structure that can't be eliminated or reorganized or changed, at least for now. Right? That power structure of adult x not adult. So it's tough because it's a blanket statement. It's a blanket statement to say that in any situation ever, the adult always has authority over the youth. But that's the product of culture. You're in a position where this person has some authority over you as an older person. Even if you might have the ability to, say, rat her out or shame her or have her shamed externally for her sex work, I assume, she's still an adult. So, like, it's a tangled, messy power thing you found yourself in. And I wish that I could have told you to abandon this social link when it first came up. But sometimes, like pieces in a game, we find ourselves unable to say no when some external force feels like it's pushing on us. So what I think you ought to do now, despite the fact that you might feel like there's some, I don't know, deep-seated mechanical benefit to getting close to this person, you should probably focus on someone your own age, who you don't have such a complex and potentially harmful power dynamic with. Now, I don't mean to say that complex power dynamics are bad in relationships or that teenagers are incapable of engaging them thoughtfully or with care. I just think that it's a big risk, emotionally and more concretely, being in this place with someone in the position your teacher is in. So here's what I think you should do. Talk to your teacher about this. Tell her that, while you have been enjoying the company you're keeping and the benefits that you get from that company, tell your teacher you need to work something else out. This can't go on. It might be nice that she's doing all this stuff for you. And also, can we talk about where you're getting all the money to pay for this? Don't you know that fucking around in the Jungian unconscious is dangerous? It's time to let go. Say to this person, You are a grown-up. You should be the one telling me this. And while I appreciate that you let me slack off in class, I really don't know if this is a smart or a safe relationship for me. It's better to focus on my studies and, saving the world or whatever it is that I'm doing with all these bombs we keep making. I know that might be hard. I know that you might not feel it, right? Your body and pressure, external pressure might be pushing you to continue this relationship, but it just isn't going to be healthy for you. And this is hard because it's not your fault and it's not your job to do this, but it doesn't sound like the adult in this situation is being an adult. And if it doesn't work, if this person does not let you get out of this relationship, if she pressures you to continue, if she tells you about how she has all these problems that she needs you to solve for her, if she acts like a person who is just a background character in the larger story of your life and you're the only one with any agency, talk to another adult. Talk to your parent or guardian or talking cat. Don't just go to sleep. Get help with this. And besides, whatever happens, I bet you there's some sexy young narc who'd really love to spend Christmas Eve with you. So, you'll be okay. Now, if you ask me the exact same question about your doctor, I'm not sure I'd give you the same advice, but that's neither here nor there. Let's move on to the next question. So, Ooze asks, I get those times where relationships seem great. I mean, relationships between friends and those more romantic, but then most of the time I feel, disinterested. Kind of like I ask myself, do I want that? And I answer, not really. What's the point? So I guess I just like your thoughts or advice on this. So, Ooze, I wonder about this sometimes too. Whether there's any real proof that as human beings, we need close personal relationships to be happy. I bet if you do enough looking, you're going to be able to find studies that say, yes, absolutely. We're social creatures who have to have close friendships and other intimacy with humans to be able to thrive. And I suspect there'll be other studies that say, no, it can be nice to be close to people, but some folks don't need or desire that, and that's okay. Now, I'm generally very much in favor of not harassing yourself for feeling something that you don't feel. A personal example. In relationships, earlier in my life, relationships that were de facto monogamous, learning that the person that I was in one of these monogamous relationships with had done something emotionally or sexually intimate with someone, not me, should have made me feel bad. The fact that the people I am close to are close to other people doesn't make me feel bad. I don't resent them or feel bothered by the emotional, sexual, or otherwise categorical closeness of people I like with the people they like. However, as a younger person, I spent a lot of time beating myself up. Not about the way I was feeling exactly, but about the ways that I wasn't feeling. I spent a lot of time agonizing over feelings like I should be more mad or more sad or feel betrayed or something that wasn't there. And while it was hard for me that this person felt they had to hide their intimate connections from me, or that the intimacy they'd found prompted them to reduce their closeness with me, it wasn't the thing itself that bothered me. I had a lot of pressure from other friends to be upset. A lot of, well, this person wasn't good enough for you, or that person is just a slut, you're better off, which is like a gross thing to say about a person, especially a person that your friend is close to. Don't do that. The sentiment generally was that I should have had a specific emotional response that I wasn't having. Now, this can come up in relationships a lot. There's a ton of expectation built into our models for relationships. The idea that, for example, we should always want to have sex with the people we're in relationships with, or that we should love the people we have sex with, or that we shouldn't want to have sex with our friends. And that's just a couple of explicitly sex-centric things. So what I'm getting at, I guess, is that maybe you should want to be close to people, or you should desire intimacy with other humans to a specific or constant degree, might be a societal pressure rather than, say, the expression of an emotional need in your case. Now, I can't say that for sure. This is just more me suggesting you should give yourself a chance to feel what you feel without, I don't know, shooting yourself to death. I suppose, as with a lot of other things, I tend to think about relationships kind of existentially, or absurdly, if you prefer. If all of human endeavor and existence has no inherent meaning, how can human relationships? In the sense that I don't think human relationships, which is to say being acquainted with someone, having a friend, having a lover, having a spouse or whatever, I don't think any of that stuff has any inherent meaningful value. I don't think just because we're around someone a lot, or even because we choose to be close to someone, that there's necessarily meaning de facto. I reject the idea that relationships are necessary at all, or that they are for everyone the same degree of, or at all, important. I think we have to endeavor to create meaning where we feel the need to do so. Just because we have a friend or a boyfriend or a whole polycule doesn't mean that we can just let those relationships exist because by existing they have meaning. We create meaning by first desiring to do so. We want to have friendship. We want love. We want to be close to people. We desire those things, and we express those desires by laboring to create the relationships that fulfill them. That work, that imbuing a relationship with meaning, filling the empty word with actual sentiment and emotion and labor, makes it real, makes it meaningful. And that, to me, is the real effort. And it sounds to me like you're not always feeling that desire. So I would start by not beating yourself up. When you have those feelings of, is this worth it? Examine those feelings, right? Live in them. Don't immediately reject the idea that no is a valid answer. Don't pressure yourself by thinking, well, I must be wrong. Everyone needs friendships. There's some intersection here with assumed neurotypicality and normative relationship models. But I think the real goal here is to get okay with your feelings and try to understand them. This might be about you not having any current relationships that feel satisfying or worth the effort. And that's okay. Sometimes we go through times in our lives where we're not super connected to the people around us. I think everybody, to some degree or another, experiences this. Usually in transitional phases. Maybe you move to a new city and you don't know anyone, or you leave school, you go through a personal change, need distance from your old social structures. All of that is okay. This stuff's pretty normal. Sometimes, though, it's just all the time. Like, people have different needs. And some folks need to be around people a lot. They need to go to parties. They need to have tons of deep, intimate conversations. They need to have lots of people to have sex with, or whatever creates intimacy for them. That's a thing that they require to feel comfortable and happy in their lives. Other folks don't need those things. Both ways, and all the stuff in between, permanent or transitory, are okay. I'm big on temet nosce, right? Knowing yourself in a meaningful way as much and as deeply as possible. Understanding the feelings that we feel, what causes those feelings, and the whole meta-narrative around that process. And I figure that even if you can't come to a place where there's an answer, the search for that answer can be enlightening. When you feel disinterested in relationships, what causes that? What do you notice yourself feeling? Are there other things that occur at the same time? Do you feel like this when your relationships are stable and predictable? Or do you feel this way mostly when they're chaotic and loosely formed? When you feel this way, is it accompanied by other feelings? Other emotions that come along for the ride? Is your sense of disinterest companioned by negative emotions? By positive ones? How intense are those feelings? Are there specific things about your relationships that feel better or more relevant? Asking yourself these kinds of questions, trying to identify your own point of view, absent of a sense of what you should or shouldn't feel, might help you get a better handle on what's going on. And I think that there can be a pretty big difference between I don't feel like I need this and this isn't worth it. One of those feels like an expression of desire and self-understanding, and the other feels like it feels a bit more negative. I definitely think that it might be a sign there could be other stuff going on. Are there other things in your emotional landscape that feel similarly not worth it? Is it a common occurrence for you to feel disconnected from these kinds of things? I'm not trying, nor am I in any position to like diagnose you, but I know that for me, those feelings of like, why bother, can accompany other depression-related stuff. So I don't know, maybe there's something there for you. Maybe there isn't. Honestly, if it's an option for you, I'd suggest talking to someone about it. Someone who's not as asynchronous as I am. Someone like a counselor or a therapist, if that's available and affordable for you. If not, someone you trust. If this feeling exists in an otherwise generally stable place, you're feeling pretty good and invested in the rest of your life, but not your relationships, maybe you just need less intimacy than other people. And I think the best that I can do right now at this remove from you is tell you that you're okay. It's okay. You're not an aberration. You're not weird. You're not broken. So think about it. Do some work with yourself and with someone you trust and who's good at this. The better you understand your feelings, the more sense they're going to make, and the easier it's going to be for you to make peace with them. Which ultimately I think is the best thing for you. Our third question comes to us from Alfalfa. Alfalfa writes, a close friend of mine is bisexual and in the past has confessed to me that she has feelings for me. Unfortunately, I can't reciprocate these feelings and let her know that. Oh, I see. Let her know that. You let her know that you can't reciprocate. Okay. All right. Unfortunately, I can't reciprocate these feelings and let her know that. I enjoy her company and friendship, but sometimes she blurs that line and makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to hurt her or lose her, but I know she's not over it, even though it won't work out. Any advice, Adam? So I want to start. There's a big old red flag smack dab in the middle of this question. And I want to start with that red flag before I talk at all about like subtle homophobic cultural influence or queer confusion, any of that. The thing that stands out, and I hope all of you will agree, has nothing to do with the sexual identities of the people involved, nor, in fact, with the idea that sex is even part of this question. It seems to me that a boundary has been put in place and then pushed on in a way that isn't consensual. Reading this question, I see a no thank you, being met with a, yeah, but what about now? So that shit is not okay. If you said to this person, you are not interested in them, and they are blurring the lines, they need to stop being a fucking dirtbag. I do not care what their gender is. I do not care what their sexual identity or experience or whatever is. They need to fucking stop doing the thing you told them not to do. Now, in a perfect world, the consent violator, upon being notified of their misbehavior, would apologize and do everything possible to rectify this violating behavior, including, but not limited to, cessation of the relationship altogether. Now, we don't live in a perfect world, and it's possible that this person isn't even aware that they're doing it, so I'm going to have to go with the pragmatic advice of tell this person firmly and intently that you want them to stop. I don't know what your blurred lines look like, but I can tell you that Robin Thicke is a fucking creep, and there's some fucked up stuff around how hard it can be for us to say clearly, stop it, without feeling rude or prudish or like we're the bad guys. You, Alfalfa, are not the bad guy. Now, it feels to me like you care about this person, and you want them to be happy and to feel okay about themselves and about your relationship. Saying no and having firm boundaries is a great way to show you care about someone. I mean it. I have had people say to me, I am not interested in having sex with you, and I feel like it is among the most intimate, vulnerable things a person can say, even if, in the situation, I wanted to have sex with that person, because they were being honest, they were having integrity to themselves, and who doesn't like having friends with integrity? So I hope that when your friend hears you say, friend, I am not interested in making this thing a part of our relationship, and I want you to stop pressuring me, that person hears you. I hope that person is the good friend that you think and hope that they are, and that they stop. I mean, hell, I'm gonna take a second. You can go ahead and clip this or grab the YouTube link. It doesn't matter. Whatever you like, and send this to them. Hi. So, I hear you're not doing a great job respecting your friends' boundaries around sex stuff. I know it's confusing and difficult when you want something and someone else doesn't, but I promise you, respecting them and being enthusiastically supportive of their boundaries is better than fucking them if they don't want to fuck you. I promise. Please, get your shit together. Be a good person. And thank your friend for saying no. It's very hard to say no to your friends. Respect and appreciate their effort. An apology would help too. Say sorry. Do better. So my ultimate advice here is that you express this boundary again. Tell them that you want to stay friends, but that they're definitely being unfriendly. Be real and be firm. And if they don't listen, they're not friend material. I'm sorry. Really. It sucks when you have to say goodbye to someone because they won't respect your space. It's not your fault, and you're not hurting them. It's them behaving badly and inappropriately and not being able to deal with it. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about being a queer person, or I guess a bisexual person in this case, and how that can be weird and fucked up and confusing. So, none of this excuses bad consent behavior or disrespecting boundaries, okay? This is not an excuse. It's just some content for the folks in the straight seats. Sometimes when you're a queer person, you have a hard time with attraction. You find that the people you're having intimate non-sexual relationships with can end up being the people you find yourself wanting to smooch. You might see people who you're close to and think, damn, I want to smooch them. And you might not have the vocabulary or the bravery or, fuck it, the safety of culture just to ask. We get taught, straight or gay or otherwise, by our culture that asking for consent is not part of the romantic or sexy story, right? We learn that first kisses happen by magic. People have sex because, I don't know, physically you can just tell when it's supposed to happen. It's not like that, though. And so when we feel these things towards people, we tend to either hide them and agonize, wondering and maybe secretly hoping that they're not as straight as they think that they are. We do a lot of work, either not to have to ask or to wait around for that magical, oh shit, maybe I was gay all along moment, without ever directly confronting these things, because it doesn't have to be present culturally in relationships. It does. It should be. I'm just saying that we're impelled to not think about it that way. Being attracted to your straight friends is a thing that I think pretty much happens universally among queer folks. It's not really avoidable. And what we need to do is respect them enough to be honest about it and to have a dialogue, not just like look longingly at their Facebook photos and wonder how many times we have to watch Yuri on Ice together before they realize what they really feel. What we need to do is respect our friends' response to our open, honest communication about this stuff. Now, Alfalfa, you said that it was unfortunate that you couldn't return your friends' affection. And I got to tell you, straight people, this kind of language is so fucking confusing. So confusing. Saying something to your queer friends like, I'm not gay, but I wish I was so that I could love you the way you want me to, is patronizing and hurtful. It's much better to say, I'm sorry. I don't feel that way about you. I hope that we can talk this out and get through it together. I love you and our relationship, and I want to be here for you through this. Or fuck it, just say, no, I'm not into that. I like you, but I don't want to bang you. Honesty on both sides. Empathy in both directions here. Straight folks, please, like, just be gentle with your queer friends. Being queer is hard and it's confusing, but don't let them off the fucking hook. They still have to be good people. Queer folks, being straight can seem like it's easy mode, but confronting a lifetime of low-grade, cultural, embedded homophobia can be real fucking hard too. Be gentle with your straight folks. Let's all try not to look at having sex with a person as some reaffirming action that will suddenly make us feel like real humans. Let's not pretend that romance is more real or better or more desirable than deep friendship. What's happening here should be an offer of a lateral move. Shall we do the sex? It's a sideways move from not doing the sex, not gaining a level. Hence, saying, no, thank you, is not about rejecting more intimacy. It's about rejecting a certain kind of intimacy. Let me part ways with you on a fantastically nerdy analogy. Traditional, normative, hierarchical relationships are like Dungeons and Dragons. It is generally assumed that you will begin at level 1 with someone, and that you will progress in a more or less linear, upward fashion, or probably die. I, however, prefer my relationships to be more like award-winning tabletop role-playing game Dungeon World characters. You start off with someone, choosing the ways you customize your relationship with them. And when you gain intimacy levels, your relationship expands outward into weird new territory, laterally expressing yourselves together rather than simply marching onward and upward. Telling someone you are interested in a different kind of intimacy is asking them if maybe it's time to take a move from the Bard playbook. But here's the thing. Maybe that person would rather just stay a barbarian, you know? And that's okay. There's all kinds of fun shit you can do when you're a barbarian. Thanks for coming, everybody. This has been episode number 2 of Office Hours, Hot for Teacher, a write-in relationship advice show from your fave GM. If you want to get involved, you can go to www.adam-koble.com. You can click on that Hot for Teacher link. And if you can tear yourself away from the sexy picture of me, fill out that form. And I would love to answer your question on the air. We will see you next time, everybody.